Hi everyone, and welcome to Module 3, your game-based learning and gamified classroom brochure or newsletter. I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. And we should do the same if you're following along on the standalone PowerPoint, so that way your links will be active. So let's get started. Our overview, we're going to be talking about desktop publishing, and in this regard, we're going to be looking at newsletters, brochures, and a little bit of infographics. And then as well as game-based learning, gamification, I'm going to show you some templates. I'm going to give you some templates and tools and just really fully prepare you to do this module. And then we'll have some discussion board questions and then your overall assignment tracker. And again, our topic is desktop publishing. Here are our two ISTE standards that we are going to be covering. I also notate this in your rubric so that when you are ready to do your artifact reflection for your chalk and wire portfolio, you can refer back to these as well as your in-task standards. Okay, so some of the best practice principles that we're going to be covering for your desktop publishing, some of them are a little similar to the ones for your multimedia presentation from Module 2, so that'll be a little bit of a review, and then I've added some more for you as an option. Okay, so again, this one should look familiar. The Non-Designer's Design Book, 4th edition. And this is really geared toward printed materials or even newsletters, brochures that may be delivered via the internet and or email, or printed out and given that way as well. So this is probably one of the better books that you can use for this type of design, okay, if you wanted to buy a book. And then again, this should be familiar to you as well. Dr. Dolly has done a great job in summarizing those principles that are described in Mr. Williams' Non-Designer's Design Book here in a presentation. I thought this might be a more engaging way for you to read it and modeling for you for what to do for your students. If you can find these kinds of presentations already created by highly regarded people, and then include that, then you should do that. So here's the link. Hopefully you already have seen this before. She has 38,000 views on this, so obviously there's a lot of interest, and generally the more views, that means it's a little bit more reliable, but don't always go by that, but that's a good indicator. Also, for the first time, I am linking you to some tutorials from lynda.com. Long story short, lynda.com was founded, 15 plus years ago by a professor, and she was just creating video tutorials for her students, kind of like I'm doing for you now, at either community college or a full university, but higher learning for sure. And they just caught on, and then the business just grew, and it was actually headquartered and founded out of Carpinteria, which is in Southern California, about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic, north of Los Angeles, and it's actually about 15 minutes from where I was born and partially raised, and the other time I was here in Oklahoma. So I do like this company. They have actually partnered with Blackboard, and they have these great video tutorials, basically everything you want to know in terms of learning technology or graphic design or photography or just about anything. They have a lot of videos, and Southeastern makes these available to us for free. So this is really great training, and notice that you can break up the modules and just watch parts of it. It tells you how many minutes each section is, and you can rewind and go back and forth through each section of the video. Now, there are other services like this you should know while I'm talking about Lynda, like Atomic Learning is one of the other main ones that I can think of that have these great tutorial videos about all things education and technology and education technologies available to us. And I remember when I was teaching when I first started teaching in a school district I was teaching 5th and 6th grade, and we used atomic learning at that time, and that was about 15 plus years ago now. So these are a great service. So please work through this. You can kind of see some of the more high-level theory if you were going to create a newsletter from scratch. This is how you would do it. Although we're not going to be creating a newsletter or a brochure from scratch in here. We don't have that kind of time, and you will likely not have that kind of time when you're teaching in the classroom either. So I'm going to tell you about this theory and these tools, but you're going to use pre-designed templates where somebody's already done this work for you. Okay, but I did want you to see this. Maybe you end up designing the newsletter for your school or for the district even. Anyhow, you know it's here, but we're not going to use it specifically for this assignment. Okay. And this is more advanced. So if you're going to make an HTML email newsletter, so say you were going to code a newsletter to send it through email, you're probably, again, not going to do this. I at least want you to know it's here. And you can kind of just briefly, don't spend a whole time, certainly don't spend 2 or 3 hours or however many total tutorials that are here. Don't spend all that time on this. Spend no more than 5 or 10 minutes on the previous slide and this one, at least just sort of familiarizing yourself with it so you at least know they exist. Same thing with this one. InDesign tutorials. InDesign is one of the industry standard. If you're going to go work for a big company and be designing desktop publishing materials for them, you would likely use InDesign. When I was the yearbook advisor at a junior high, we used InDesign. So, so here's that, and again, spend no more than 5 or 10 minutes on each of these slides, but I wanted you to see them as best practice. Now we have some tools and samples for you. Here are your templates. This is what you are going to use, and although I've given you other options, I like this one the best. Microsoft has done a great job at providing templates for educational use. You will see once we click on the link here, it's going to go. They have newsletter and brochure templates already designed for you. And basically all you have to do is just click and type in your information, drag and drop your pictures or upload your pictures like you would to an email. And it's much more user-friendly. You're not really doing any of the design. You're more just getting your content in there. So I'm going to let that load. Looks like my network's going a little slow tonight. And we'll come back to these. Okay. But if you browse by category, you will see underneath here in alphabetical order there is a link for education, which is the direct link there. Okay. There's also Sway. You should be familiar with this from the past module. And notice that you can create newsletters here. And you can go ahead and get started, watch their videos. I'm not going to spend time during this presentation walking you through that because they will do that for you. And I do try to limit the size of these videos for those of you who have lower bandwidth settings. So, but you can definitely do a newsletter from Sway, watch the videos, and it gives you step-by-step instruction on how to do that newsletter in Sway. Okay, and we have a sample from a student from last semester who did one. You also have a little bit more of a tutorial here for Sway via Microsoft, and there's the link to the YouTube, and they will walk you through how to create an electronic-based or e-publication of multimedia tools. Okay. Then there is Google Apps for Education templates, and you can do a search. These are often designed by other educators, by teachers, and so the quality does vary. And you can search for newsletters, you can search for brochures in here as I did, and you'll see they have some. Again, they're not as sleek and well designed as Microsoft's because they are crowdsourced by other in the classroom educators. And then the Microsoft ones are designed by professionals. So I would stick with those, but you can certainly look in here in the templates and see what you can find. Okay, notice you can sort by hottest or most users or document types or whatever. And then we have education templates for Pages. So you can, if you have a Mac, you can download the education templates, and then Pages is like their Microsoft, but it's made by Apple, and they have some templates in there as well for your use. Here are some other templates for you recommended by edtechteacher.org, and they have Booker, they have Blogster, they have Letterpop, and you can see that there's a description and the usefulness rating. Blogster is rated out of 5. I've used it before. It is nice and highly engaging, especially K-12 education, easy to use. So please feel free to try these out as well for your newsletter or your brochure, whichever you choose to do. Now don't get confused, because last semester I had students do both a newsletter and a brochure, and I felt that this semester there was a better use of your time to do a different project for both your experience and your portfolio. So we will give you the opportunity to pick just one of those, a newsletter or a brochure. Here's also some templates by Xerox, and so you can see here's one that you can download, or a trifold, and you just click on that link and you can download that, and that looks very educational. Pinterest also has some great samples and great ideas on brochures and newsletters, and honestly just about anything. Presentations, lesson plans, you can find just about anything we're doing in this class on Pinterest. You just do a keyword search. So I just searched for teacher brochure, and these were all the ones that came up. And you feel free to poke around on Pinterest. A lot of educators use it, and it is a very helpful tool. Notice they have teacher letters, open houses, homework, classroom jobs. Okay, lots of pre-made there. Now this is new that I've added this semester, infographics. And so basically these are a newsletter brochure, but much more picture-based, and often have a lot more statistics or numbers. So go ahead and visit that link. I actually uploaded that whole file to my Dropbox for you, and basically it's a step-by-step presentation of how to create and use infographics. Now, if you wanted to create an infographic instead of a newsletter or brochure for your classroom, then that would be fine too. So whatever tool you use or whatever format you use, I'm fine with. Just pick one, and then we're going to talk about what I want to see in there. And what I want to see in there is your game-based learning principles in class, game-based learning in classroom, and gamification principles. So here are some of the key thinkers and programs I want you to be aware of. This is a great little video. As you'll see, it has almost 4 million, it's probably over 4 million at this point, viewers. And it was filmed and aired in 2010. Now this is Jane McGonigal. She's a PhD in game studies or something like that. Out of Berkeley. She's brilliant. She has a twin sister who's brilliant. And her main thing is how games can make a better world. And that includes game-based learning, gamification principles, all of that. So this is a short little video. Please go ahead and take time now and go watch the entire thing. I think it's under 5 minutes. There's a transcript here. You can look at that as well. So this is a great little video for you to kind of get, oh, it's 20 minutes. So, but it's well worth the 20 minutes. So it's one of my favorite videos for game-based learning and gamification. Okay. And this is her book, Reality is Broken and Why Games Make Us Better and How They Can Change the World. And I agree. So you'll see that hard copy is $2.97. You can get it on Kindle, $14. I have several versions of this book, and it's a great edition. Not required, but highly recommended. We also have Games for Learning out of the Office of Education Technologies, which is out of our U.S. Department of Education. And There are several different links here. They're constantly updating us. We have a White House Game Jam, Games for Learning. Basically, these folks are leading the effort on how to use games for learning and gamification principles, like how to turn your classroom into games with rewards and badges and achievement levels, and how to positively reinforce the interaction and engagement in your classroom. So, and I'm going to be adding more and more and more of those principles into this course as well. Okay, so let me go back. I do want you to spend time, go through their tech resources, initiatives, publications. Future Ready is an important initiative. And spend a little time in each one of these, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter, and because this will be a huge resource for you, very important resource for you while you're in your classroom. I can't tell you how many people reach out to me and say, Crystal, Dr. Jensen, can you please help me with adding games into my classroom, games for learning that are authentic and that students are actually acquiring skills and abilities that they need to pass tests, that they need to prepare for future grades, and that they need to be successful in their overall lives. So this is one of the key components and foundations I would like you to leave this course with. Games for Change is a great group, and they do a lot with K-12 education. So they're looking at ways to use games to make the world better. And how do we get K-12 students involved in that, teachers involved in that, and they have a lot of resources. They have lesson plans, they have integration ideas. So definitely spend the time and look at the games that they recommend, look at their programs, their services, and all of that. So there's a lot of information here. I would spend at least 15 to 20 minutes on each one of these websites and take notes and be looking. So your question is, what can I use from this website that would help my future classroom? And then that's what's going to go into your newsletter or brochure. So when I see your newsletter or brochure, I want to say, okay, this is student Rivera's brochure on their classroom, and they're going to use badges in their classroom for student rewards. Students are going to be able to achieve certain levels by completing certain modules or assignments or projects. They're going to have service to their community, and these are the items that they need to have in there. So as we go through and look at the different gamification or game-based learning principles, then those are the things that I want you to communicate as if you were doing those in your classroom. And I should be able to look at your newsletter or your brochure and say, this is how this student is going to be using these principles in their classroom. They're going to be using Minecraft to teach math and social studies, and these are the specific projects, or here are a couple of ideas of projects that they're going to do. And so we'll talk more about this as we go on. You could certainly have a wonderful service learning project revolving around a Games for Change, and they certainly describe that throughout this entire website. Maybe water conservation is a game for change, or they're tracking their water conservation. There's a whole bunch of different integration ideas that are on that side. Another one is another great site, gamesforlearningsociety.org, GLS. They have an annual conference every year at University of Wisconsin in Madison, and that's their School of Education. And they look at innovative video games, industry leaders, unique culture, and so here's their conference. You can spend a little time and look at the games they're doing, the research they're doing. One of their key collaborators was involved with Quest Atlantis, which looks at ancient civilizations and cultures to teach about that. And so how could we use games to teach about ancient civilizations and cultures in Oklahoma that has a rich ancient culture, a series of cultures from Oklahoma. So go through this and figure out ways that they're using research and design for games for learning to empower their work in ways that you can maybe use that in your classroom as well. Here's some other ideas for you. This is the Gamification of Education Wiki, and here's really a start to finish tutorial on gamification. So game-based learning systems, how do you gamify step by step? What are the difference between games and gamification? Here are some examples, types of players, and so here's a bunch of information here that there's case studies to where you can pick and choose from what they're already doing in different classrooms and use those in your classroom. So you're getting a bunch of ideas. Think about you're going shopping around to these different websites, doing a web quest, and gathering ideas of gamification, game-based learning principles that you are going to put into your classroom, and then you're going to communicate that to me in your newsletter and brochure. Okay? Here's some other ways: gamified community with Marketo. Here's a gamified mobile app. Maybe you would have your students create a mobile app for your classroom, and they earn points by checking in at the cafeteria or arriving on campus on time. And you have maps with achievement levels after they visit certain teachers or complete certain courses. All of those types of gamification principles which you'll read about. All right, here's some other tools and tutorials. I mentioned earlier badges and Mozilla, which is the founder of Firefox, that web browser. They are one of the leaders on badges, and if you think about the Boys and Girl Scouts, now they're one of the leading organizations that have used badges historically. And basically it's when you do something you're supposed to, you get a badge. And with the Boys and Girl Scouts, that badge would be sewn onto your uniform. Well, here it's a digital badge, and it goes into your website, or it goes onto a page that is designed to hold these badges and communicate them. So here's a little bit more about badges, and I believe you'll be hearing more and more about badges in education as you go on. They're still fairly new, especially in Oklahoma, but I've heard them used a little bit. They're getting more and more traction in California and the bigger cities for sure. The digital ones are. And then here's some more information about open digital badges. There are ways, instead of giving grades, you would give a badge, and then once students have collected a certain amount of badges, that's how they pass a class, sort of like competency-based education, which you'll hear about. And so you can do a little bit of reading on that as well. You don't have to know this document back and forth, but I certainly want you at least to kind of skim it and look for ideas of things that you can use in your classroom, ways that you could use digital badges as part of gamification in your classroom. Okay. And then here's a basic infographic on ways to gamify your classroom. So in 5 simple steps, create a website or use your LMS. That may be Google Classroom, ClassCraft, Edmodo. I used to have PowerSchool before. We have Blackboard here. So you need somewhere to track all these digital badges and gamification principles. And then, let's see if my internet will go. And number 2, you decide the rules. So just like you're playing a board game or an outdoor game, you also have to decide the rules. So here's the link to those 5 simple steps to gamify your classroom. This is also an example of an infographic. So this is a very simple infographic. It's mainly picture-based. All one document, minimal text and varying fonts and colors to draw attention. And you can choose to do this instead of a newsletter or brochure, but you'll do one of the 3 about ways you're going to gamify or add game-based elements to your classroom. This is very similar to what you'll be doing. Okay. There's another short article, Gamification in Education. Edutopia is a great organization for you to follow, a publication. They have Real World Teachers. Vicki Davis is a very popular one. She has a lot of followers on Twitter. And so a lot of the EdTech leaders publish to Edutopia. So here is Gamification in Education, and they have a whole strand on game-based learning, which you can follow, keep up to date with, and if you ever need more strategies, go back to this game-based learning strand of Edutopia. Okay. go ahead and peruse this or read through this fairly quickly. And then there's Minecraft EDU. Now Minecraft is probably the leading game-based learning programs in schools these days. It was initially designed independently, but then recently bought by Microsoft, which of course they've put a lot of money and resources behind it, so it's really taken off. And my hope is that you will at least all be using this in some form or fashion in your classroom, because it just globally has been found and proven to be very helpful for students to learn concepts in a digital format, and has really increased their learning. It's very inexpensive, and we will be using Minecraft in this program in future semesters, and I've been doing the initial research about getting it started, but I certainly encourage you and hope that you will really look into Minecraft. I highly recommend it, and this can certainly be one of the ways that you integrate game-based learning or plan to integrate game-based learning into your classroom. Here are some step-by-step resources. This was created by a friend, Wesley Fryer, Dr. Fryer. He's up by Norman Schools. And so here's a bunch of videos. Really, this is like not a one-stop shopping for Minecraft EDU resources. Teaching with Minecraft, Minecraft EDU community, everything you need to know about Minecraft is here. And so I hope you'll use this, and you'll see that there's lots of tools, and this is definitely a way that you can integrate game-based learning into your classroom, and this can certainly go into your brochure. Now, if you use Dr. Fryer's ideas, of course, cite this source, at least give his name and a link. So it says he is copyrighted it, but just give him credit. And that's typical for educational resources. You're welcome to use them for your own classrooms, but just always give credit to the author, and here it's Dr. Wesley Fryer. Okay? Lots of great ideas about integrating game-based learning into your classroom. Here's some more resources for game-based learning. Spend some time and really, 15, 20 minutes again on these types of articles, and look for ways to integrate game-based learning into your classroom. And then again, you're going to pick out just a handful, or at least 2 pages worth, 1 page front and back, to go into your newsletter or brochure or infographic, and about ways that you're going to implement these into your classroom. Okay, I'm just giving you an abundance of ideas. You aren't going to use them all. You're going to pick the ones that you think will work for your classroom. And then MIT and Scratch, so Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And I was fortunate enough to visit the MIT lab and the designer of Scratch. It's a wonderful program about teaching kids to code and to animate and all of that. So they have a wonderful website. This whole program is free, very well designed by some of the best researchers and educators on the planet at MIT. And then here is their educators resource. They have lesson plans created. They have resources for students and parents and community members and teachers, of course. So spend a little time, again, 15, 20 minutes, looking through these 2 websites, both the platform as well as the educator resource, and familiarize yourself. This is a wonderful way, Scratch is a wonderful way to integrate game-based learning principles into your classroom. I spent some time up in Berkeley, California, and Berkeley has one of the best computer science programs in the US, if not the world, along with MIT. And they use Scratch for their bachelor's degree computer science. So, and then I also know folks using Scratch with kindergartners and first graders. So it is totally flexible from K all the way to college level, and all of those lesson plans are already created and available to you for free. Wonderful resource. Okay. And so then to reflect, Wanted to give you a couple of sample lesson plans, also using brochures and desktop publishing with your students, so having them create them. And here's Read, Write, Think. It's another great publication that I would suggest you subscribe to. And follow this link, and this is there's 8 40 to 60-minute lesson plans. It's a whole unit on using brochures to teach informational writing. Again, this would be a way to use brochures as a lesson with your students. Here's a second lesson plan for K-12 students, desktop publishing, and perhaps this can help you create your own too. The one I want you to turn in is more of a communication tool. You could turn it into a lesson plan as well for game-based learning and just tell me, maybe describe a lesson that you're going to do with game-based learning, or you can describe your overall program on game-based learning or gamification, or both. You have one page that you're going to fill back and front. If it's a newsletter, you can just fit it all on one side because it's more text heavy. If it's a brochure, please do front and back. And infographic, it could just be one page, but oftentimes the infographic pages are longer. Okay. All of that's in the step-by-step instructions too. Now, as an extension, there are bulk newsletter and brochure email services. If you're going to be sending your newsletter or brochure out to more than 250 people, then you cannot typically send it through traditional email services. Even your Google Mail will not allow you to send more than 200 to 250 folks. So say you're sending it out to your whole junior high that has 1,000 students and then their parents. That you cannot send one newsletter or brochure out to all them. What you would have to do, and this is worth its weight in gold, is create a Google group, and that will allow you to send bulk email out to groups of more than 250. So that's the way to get around that limit, is to create a group and then put all their emails in there, and then email your brochure newsletter out to all of them. That's as an FYI. Also, there's another extension about, there are two main services that I like. There are more, but the two ones that I stick to, one is MailChimp, and MailChimp is free. You can send up to 2,000 subscribers your newsletter brochure that you actually create in MailChimp. So they have templates already created in MailChimp that you can just add your content to, and then send it out directly to your subscribers for free, and up to 2,000 of them. So this is a really great service. The one similar to it that you might see and a lot of folks use is Constant Contact. It starts at $20 a month and goes up from there, so it's not free. It's free for 60 days, but after that it's $20 a month. So it does have more features and more capabilities. If you're needing those, then you'll look at Constant Contact. I assume that what you're going to be doing for your classroom, MailChimp should be enough, or even your school. But you'll see that, again, they have customizable templates. You can drag and drop and edit those newsletters or brochures right in Constant Contact and then send them out. And then they also have analytics on that back end. They tell you who's opened them, how long they read it, if they forwarded it to somebody else, which is a really great tool especially for entire schools or school districts. So step-by-step instructions on this module. Watch and take notes on all of those items I just shared with you. So go through the entire instructional presentation and video. Be thinking in the back of your mind, is this something I want to use in my classroom? And be taking notes. Maybe you're working on a second screen, and have those items ready. I would have start with even 15 to 20 items that you want to add to your newsletter and brochure about gamification of stuff you're going to do in your classroom. You're making a brochure for your parents, for your students, about your classroom and what they're going to do from a gamified and game-based learning standpoint. So be taking notes as you go through. or highlighting or however you want to do that. And then number 2, make sure you read my rubric very carefully, okay? I had some of the students from the previous modules just not read the rubric carefully, so they missed easy points. And for me, those rubrics are very spelled out, very explicit, and so you either have it or you don't. So please make sure you even print out the rubric, have it next to you as you're creating your newsletter brochure. Again, review all the samples and templates provided. Okay, you're probably going to spend a few hours. Think of this like you're being in a class with me. You're going to spend a few hours going through this material. I believe that the folks that had the issues in the previous modules, they didn't really go through, they didn't watch the video, they didn't really go through the samples and templates. So take a little bit of time and do that. And then add in at least one graphic multimedia component per section or panel. I like plenty of pictures. If you can add in the videos, that's excellent. Excellent, excellent. You'll want to do that, okay? People like to see photos and highly engaging text and fonts, okay? Once you complete your first draft, you and your learning partner should assess your work based on the rubric. So send your newsletter, brochure, infographic to your learning partner, have them grade it, go through and grade your own, grade theirs as well, and then make any necessary changes. Send it to your learning partner first. I always have somebody review my work first. Upon completion, share your final draft on the provided Blackboard discussion board provided. So I'm going to have a discussion board for these. You can share them again and give each other feedback that way. I think that's helpful. Review others' work and then revise your work as needed. Okay. After those steps, you're going to turn in your final draft to the provided Blackboard assignment link. So I've created a link for you. You'll upload it just like you've been doing. Okay. Here is the rubric, and notice that the in-task standards are going down the left, the ISTE nets across the top. That's what you'll use for your chalk and wire reflection. And here are your points. Basically, if you do each of these 4 things, you get the 4 points. Okay, so I'm very, make sure the thing here is, because the template's already pretty much made for you, I'm really going to be grading much more heavily on the content. So please make sure that you have that game-based learning, gamification principles content in there as it relates to your future imagined classroom. Okay. And as an assignment tracker, I just kind of make sure that we have our bearings. You are currently in Module 3, and which is your brochure or newsletter here. I decided to give you the option. That is going to be due by week 8, which will be halfway through the semester. And that's March 5th, right before spring break. And so you'll have time over spring break to do Module 4, which will be good. So you have 2 weeks to finish this newsletter or brochure. It'll take you a few hours to go through the material I provided, and then should not take you more than a day total to do your newsletter or brochure or infographic. So you have plenty of time. Please just make sure you structure your time and give yourself enough time to have your learning partner review it, give yourself time to make edits and revisions, and share it on the discussion board, and then turn in the final draft before it is due on March 5th, Saturday, March 5th by 11:59. Okay. Please also, if there's concerns or questions, please do not wait until Saturday, March 5th at 9 o'clock to email me your questions or problems. Please get to me. I'm more than happy to help you. I answer texts and emails and phone calls. But please give me the allotted time. You all are definitely my priority, and I do a lot of other things to help Southeastern and help our students. And so I want to make sure I'm available and that I have enough time to respond to you. So please let me know right away if you have problems or questions. And that is it. If you have any questions, as I said, please make sure you contact me right away. I will be holding a Google Hangout. I'm thinking that it will either be Wednesday evening or Friday evening. I know Wednesday a lot of folks have other commitments, but I do want to get to you as soon as possible and while giving you enough time to review the material. So I'm thinking maybe we'll do it Friday evening, and that will give you the weekend to work on things. Please get started right away, at least reviewing the materials and maybe starting an outline and or taking notes of what you're going to put in that newsletter or brochure. Again, the hard part of this, or the more work-intensive part of this module, is deciding what the content's going to be, how you're going to actually apply these game-based learning principles and gamification principles to your classroom. Okay? Thank you. You all are doing great, and it's been a joy working with you, and I'm sure it's going to continue. Thank you.